"What is that woman doing in the executive lounge?" The hotel manager said it loud enough for 6 people to hear. He didn't whisper it. He didn't pull someone aside and ask quietly. He stood in the middle of the marble lobby of the Alderton Grand Hotel in downtown Chicago, looked across the room at a 63-year-old woman sitting in a leather chair with a cup of tea and a worn paperback novel, and said it like she had walked into the wrong building. Her name was Loretta Simms. She had a room on the 14th floor. She had a reservation confirmation printed on hotel stationery. She had a platinum loyalty card she had carried for 11 years, and she had been sitting in that chair for exactly 7 minutes before the manager decided her presence required an explanation. Let me take you back to the beginning. That morning, Loretta was in her kitchen in Cincinnati, standing at the counter in her robe and slippers, watching the percolator finish its cycle. Her kitchen smelled like coffee and the lavender dish soap her daughter kept sending in packages from Portland. The window above the sink looked out over a narrow yard with a dogwood tree that had been blooming every April for 31 years. Ever since Loretta and her late husband Raymond had planted it together the spring after they moved in. Raymond had been gone 4 years now. The house still carried him, his reading glasses on the nightstand, a cardigan on the hook by the back door that she had not moved and would not move. Photographs on the staircase wall and frames she dusted every Saturday, not because she had to, but because she liked to look at him. She poured her coffee, stood at the window, watched a cardinal land on the dogwood branch, and thought about the conference. The Regional Directors Summit for Meridian Financial Group was held twice a year. Chicago in the spring, Atlanta in the fall. Loretta had attended every single one since 2009. As the Senior Regional Director for the Ohio and Kentucky Corridor, she was responsible for the performance of 14 branch offices, 412 employees, and a portfolio that had closed the previous fiscal year at just over $2 billion in managed assets. She did not bring this up at dinner parties. She did not carry business cards unless she was in a meeting that required them. She did not dress to signal anything. She believed that what you wore to an airport or a hotel lobby was your own business, and that anyone who judged your worth by the thread count of your blazer was the one with the problem. So she packed the way she always packed. A single rolling bag that fit in the overhead bin, comfortable travel clothes, her reading glasses in a soft case, a paperback she had been meaning to finish for 3 weeks, a small framed photograph of Raymond and her at the Grand Canyon that she always tucked into the inner zipper pocket when she traveled, the way some people carry a lucky coin. She called her daughter Renee before leaving. "You've got your phone charger this time?" Loretta laughed. "I have had my phone charger every single time." "You left it in Nashville." "That was 2 years ago." Renee laughed too. She had her father's laugh. Low and easy, starting somewhere in the chest. "Call me when you land, Mom." "I always do." She hung up, locked the front door, and took a car to the airport. The Alderton Grand was the kind of hotel that made you feel the weight of its own opinion. 40 stories of glass and limestone on Michigan Avenue, a revolving door staffed by a man in a coat with gold buttons. Marble floors in the lobby that had been polished so many times they reflected the chandeliers above them like still water. Loretta had stayed here 7 times. She knew the layout. She knew the restaurant on the 2nd floor closed at 11 and opened at 6:30. She knew the elevators on the north side were faster. She knew the executive lounge on the 32nd floor had good coffee and bad lighting and comfortable chairs and was included in her reservation. The same way it had been included in every reservation she had booked through her company account for the past 8 years. She checked in at the front desk. The clerk, a young woman with her hair pinned up and a small diamond stud in each ear, typed efficiently and handed over the key cards without looking up. 2 queen beds, executive floor access, checkout Sunday, elevators to your left. Thank you. She took her bag to the room, changed out of her travel clothes, washed her face, put on a clean blouse and her comfortable flat shoes, took the elevator up 32 floors. The executive lounge smelled like fresh coffee and something warm baking somewhere she couldn't identify. Wooden furniture with leather cushions, A window wall facing the lake. She found a chair in the corner near the window where the afternoon light came through at a low angle and turned everything golden. She set her bag on the floor, flagged a passing attendant for a cup of tea, opened her novel to the page she had bookmarked somewhere over Kentucky, and settled in. 7 minutes passed. That was when she heard him. The hotel manager's name was Preston Galt. He was 41 years old, with the posture of a man who had decided sometime in his mid-30s that bearing was the same thing as authority. He wore a dark suit, a lapel pin with the hotel's crest, and an expression that suggested he found most situations mildly beneath him. He had come up to the lounge to handle what one of his front desk supervisors had quietly flagged as a situation. A guest, the supervisor had said, who did not appear to belong in the executive lounge. Preston walked in, scanned the room, and saw Loretta. He saw a woman in her 60s with short natural hair going silver at the temples. He saw flat shoes and a blouse that was not a power blazer. He saw a worn paperback and a cup of tea and reading glasses perched on her nose. He saw the small rolling bag parked beside the chair. He did not see what was not visible to him. He said what he said, loudly enough for 6 people to hear. "What is that woman doing in the executive lounge?" Loretta lowered her book. She looked at him over her glasses, the way she had been looking at people over glasses since she was 45 and first needed them. Steady. Patient. With the quality of attention that comes from a lifetime of deciding what is worth her energy and what is not. Preston walked toward her. "Ma'am, this area is reserved for guests with executive floor access. I'm going to need to see your room key. I checked in an hour ago. My reservation includes executive access." "I understand. But we've had some confusion today with guests accessing floors they're not entitled to." He said it carefully, the way people say things carefully when they know what they're really saying. "If you can show me your key, I can have this sorted out quickly." She did not move to find her key immediately. She looked at him. She had been looking at people like Preston Galt her entire career, and she knew exactly what was happening, and she knew exactly what he was doing with the words, "some confusion and not entitled to." She reached into her bag and retrieved the key card, held it up without handing it to him. "Room 3214, executive floor. Checked in at the front desk 45 minutes ago." Preston took the card, turned it over in his fingers. He walked to the lounge's small check-in counter and spoke to the attendant in a low voice. The attendant typed something, looked at the screen, looked at Preston, looked at the screen again. The screen showed what the screen always showed. Loretta Simms. Room 3214. Executive access confirmed. Preston came back. He held the card out to her. There was something in his face that was not quite an apology, more like a recalibration, the look of a man who had identified his error, but had not yet decided what to do about it. "Everything appears to be in order." She took the card from him. He did not leave. "That bag," he said, glancing at the rolling carry-on beside her chair. "Storage for personal items is available in your room. This lounge is meant to be a quieter experience for guests, and personal luggage tends to clutter the common space." The gentleman across the room had a laptop bag and a suit carrier draped over the arm of his chair. The woman near the window had a tote and a shopping bag at her feet. She looked at Preston. "My bag is not in anyone's way." He lowered his voice. "I'm not asking you to leave. I'm simply suggesting that the lounge experience is better without. You can suggest whatever you like. My bag stays where it is." Something shifted in his expression. The smooth professional surface cracked just slightly, the way ice cracks, invisibly at first, then all at once. He smiled. That practiced, paper-thin smile of a man who needed to be the last word in every room. "Of course, enjoy your afternoon." He walked away toward the lounge entrance and spoke quietly to one of the floor attendants, glancing back once over his shoulder. Loretta watched him go. Then she opened her novel to her page, placed her glasses back on her nose, and began to read. She did not let the page land. The words ran together. She closed the book and looked at the lake instead. 42 years. That was how long she had been working. Started as a bank teller in 1983, while she was putting herself through night school. Worked the counter for 4 years, moved to loan processing. Then branch management, then regional oversight. Built a career on accuracy and endurance, and the particular kind of quiet authority that does not announce itself because it does not have to. She had sat in rooms where she was the only woman, rooms where she was the only black person, rooms where she was both. She had presented to boards who looked through her until the numbers made them look at her. She had learned a long time ago that the only thing that ever changed a Preston Galt's mind was not argument, not explanation, not the slow accumulation of dignity under pressure. What changed a Preston Galt's mind was consequence. She opened her notebook. Not the novel, the other notebook, the small leather-bound one she kept in the front pouch of her bag, the one she had started carrying again 6 months ago when Meridian's executive team had launched a new service quality initiative. She uncapped her pen and wrote. Date. Time, location, the manager's name, which she had seen on his lapel pin. His words, in order as precisely as she could reconstruct them. The luggage across the room. The other bags untouched. She wrote 1 page, then a second. Then she sat back and watched the lake and waited for her tea to cool enough to drink. Preston, meanwhile, had gone back downstairs. He had a conference call with the regional hospitality director at 3, and a vendor meeting at 4:30, and a banquet set up to supervise by 6. He moved through the afternoon the way he always moved, efficiently, with the particular confidence of a man who had not yet understood what the morning would cost him. There was a staff member on duty in the executive lounge that afternoon. Her name was Simone. She was 26, had been with the hotel for 8 months, and had been watching everything from the moment Preston walked in. She had watched him say what he said. Loud enough to carry. She had watched him demand the key card from a woman who had done nothing except exist quietly in a chair. She had watched him look at the bag beside Loretta's chair, and not look at the bags belonging to any of the other guests. She had said nothing, because she had been employed for 8 months, and Preston Galt signed off on scheduling, and she had rent due on the 1st. But after Preston left the lounge, she walked over to Loretta's chair. I'm sorry about that. Her voice was low. Whatever comfort was not going to come from her uniform, she tried to put into her voice instead. That was not handled right. Loretta looked up at her. What is your name? Simone? Loretta nodded. She rested her hand briefly on Simone's arm. You did your job well today. That wasn't yours to fix. Simone nodded, her jaw working like she was keeping something back. Then she returned to the station. At 3:58 that afternoon, a man named Derek Paulson stepped off the elevator and into the executive lounge. Derek Paulson was 34 years old and had been with Meridian Financial Group for 2 years. He was the Assistant Director of Leadership Development, which meant he coordinated the logistics of events like the Regional Directors Summit currently in progress across town. He had driven over from the conference hotel to deliver updated briefing materials to several attendees staying at Overflow Properties, of which the Alderton Grand was one. He came in, scanned the lounge for familiar faces, and stopped. He knew that face. He had seen it 12 weeks ago at the annual Meridian Leadership convening in Columbus. He had been setting up registration tables in the ballroom when the incoming senior regional directors filed in for the pre-conference dinner. There had been an introduction, brief and formal. Senior Regional Director for Ohio and Kentucky. 31 years with the firm. The woman who had built the Columbus branch from $32 million in assets to $450 million in 11 years. He had shaken her hand. She had been gracious and unhurried. Her name was on the materials he was carrying right now. Loretta Simms. He crossed the room. Miss Simms? She looked up. The name recognition landed in her eyes a moment after it reached his. Mr. Paulson, she said. From the leadership convening? Yes. He glanced around the lounge, the way you do when something feels off, but you can't place why immediately. Is everything all right? She looked at him for a moment. She had been deciding, since 3:15, how much to say and to whom. She told him quietly what had happened, not with rage, not with performance. The way she wrote it in her notebook. Facts in order, with the tone of someone reporting weather. Derek's face changed as she talked. Not dramatically. The way faces change when something rearranges inside without announcing itself. He said, I need to make a call. She said, that's your decision to make. He stepped away from the chairs, toward the window overlooking the lake, and made the call. The regional hospitality director for Meridian's corporate travel program was a woman named Audrey, who had been handling hotel partnerships for 9 years and had a finely calibrated sense for when something required careful management and when it required immediate action. This was the second kind. She called the Alderton Grand's general manager directly. The general manager's name was Frank Weston. He had run this hotel for 6 years. He cared about the reviews that appeared on travel platforms and the quarterly satisfaction scores submitted by corporate accounts, and the particular reputation that luxury hotels live and die by. He did not care about it in an abstract way. He cared about it the way a person cares about something that determines whether they have a job. Meridian Financial Group was not a small account. Frank was in Preston's office within 4 minutes of hanging up. Preston, who had been drafting an email about the banquet seating chart, looked up. Tell me what happened in the executive lounge this afternoon. Preston explained. Frank listened. When Preston finished, Frank was quiet for a long moment. Do you know who she is? Preston frowned slightly. A guest with executive floor access. She is the senior regional director for Meridian Financial's Ohio-Kentucky corridor. Her company has placed over 90 guests in this hotel this week alone, and you questioned her right to be in the lounge she was booked into, in front of 6 other guests. And then you asked her to move her bag while leaving every other bag in the room untouched. Preston opened his mouth. Close it, Frank said quietly. He had not raised his voice. He did not need to. Don't say a single word that sounds like an explanation right now. Because there is no explanation for what you did that is going to help you in this conversation. Preston closed his mouth. They went upstairs. Loretta was still in her chair. She had finished her tea. She had her notebook in her lap, and the novel closed on the side table, and her eyes on the lake. The way you look at something large and unchanging when you are keeping yourself settled. When she saw them approach, she did not stand. She waited. Frank introduced himself. He did not look at Preston while he spoke. Miss Simms, I want to apologize to you personally and directly for what happened this afternoon. What you experienced was wrong. It was a failure of hospitality and a failure of basic respect, and it should not have happened. He paused. I understand if an apology isn't sufficient. But I want you to know I am aware of what occurred, and I'm committed to addressing it fully. Loretta studied him. I appreciate that you came up here, she said. She looked at Preston. Preston was doing the thing that people do when the architecture of a moment has turned against them completely. He was present but gone. The lights on, but the room behind them dark. He looked like a man who had spent 41 years building a version of himself, and was now watching it do something he had not authorized. I want you to know, he started. She let him start. She did not help him finish. I didn't realize. I had no idea who you were. She looked at him. It was the same look she had given him the first time, patient, with weight behind it. I know you didn't, she said. That's exactly the point, isn't it? He stood there with nothing left to say. That night, Derek filed a formal incident report with Meridian's executive travel and facilities team. He included the time, the location, the name of the manager, and a description of the events as Loretta had shared them, corroborated by what he had independently observed when he arrived. Simone submitted a written account to the hotel's Human Resources office before her shift ended. She had been deciding since 3:15 as well. She had decided. The next morning, the Alderton Grand's executive team convened at 8 a.m. Loretta attended the regional directors' summit across town, where she presented the Ohio-Kentucky corridor's performance data to 43 colleagues and had 3 conversations about succession planning and one about where to find the best deep dish pizza in Chicago. By the time she returned to the hotel that evening, 2 things had happened. Preston Gault had been placed on administrative suspension pending a formal review of his conduct, not just the events of the previous afternoon, but a broader review. Because when Human Resources pulled the file, they found complaints. A front desk associate 14 months ago, who said Preston had criticized her for accommodating a guest he felt should have been redirected. A catering supervisor who reported being spoken to in a way she described as demeaning after she had upgraded a table assignment for a guest Preston felt had not deserved it. A room attendant who had asked not to be assigned to his floor anymore and had not been asked why. 3 complaints. Filed, reviewed, set aside. The second thing that happened was that Claire, a 60-year-old retired librarian from Indianapolis, who had been sitting near the window in the executive lounge the previous afternoon with her own cup of tea and her own reading glasses, had done something she had been thinking about since the moment Preston Gault opened his mouth. She had been recording on her phone from the moment he said it. She had not planned to. She had just reached for her phone the way you reach for something that might be needed, and she had pressed record. And then, she had not stopped pressing it. 3 minutes and 51 seconds. She posted it that evening with a single line. Watched this happen yesterday. Thought you should see it too. By midnight, it had been shared 40,000 times. By the following morning, it was everywhere. The video showed everything. Preston's words as he entered the lounge. The keycard exchange. The bag comment, with the clear view of the laptop carrier and the tote and the shopping bag belonging to the other guests. Loretta's stillness. Her voice, measured and direct, not raised by a single degree. The comment section was not calm. Meridian Financial Group's corporate communications team was at work by 6 a.m. The statement they released by 9:30 used the phrase deeply troubling and immediate review and commitment to the dignity of all people. It also quietly confirmed what many people had already found by searching her name. Who Loretta Simms was. What she had built. How long she had been building it. The Alderton Grand's general manager issued his own statement. He named the incident. He did not minimize it. He announced a third-party review of training and conduct protocols across all departments and a direct partnership with an independent equity firm to audit policies that governed how guests were assessed upon arrival. A reporter from a national outlet reached Loretta's office by phone. She gave one interview, sitting in a conference room at the Meridian Regional Office in Cincinnati with no notes and no prepared remarks and no one standing behind her. She spoke about the women who had come before her in those buildings and those positions, women who had no title to invoke when someone looks through them, women who had walked out of those moments carrying the weight of them silently for years because there was no system that had ever suggested it was worth the trouble of setting it down. I don't think what happened to me is the story, she said. I think what happens to people who don't have my position is the story. I was an inconvenience for about 45 minutes. For other people, it's a life. She paused. What I hope comes out of this is not that people learn to check who someone is before they decide to treat them with respect. I hope they stop needing to check. Now let me tell you where things went. Loretta Simms returned to Cincinnati on a Sunday afternoon. She unlocked her front door, set her bag in the hallway, and stood for a moment in the quiet of her own house. She could smell the lavender dish soap. The late afternoon light came through the kitchen window and landed across the floor in a long diagonal stripe. She called Renee. Mom, I saw the video, I know. Are you okay? I'm fine. She looked at the cardigan on the hook by the back door. I'm fine, baby. She went to work Monday morning. The reform initiative that Meridian's executive leadership announced in the weeks following included a redesigned incident reporting structure that removed direct manager filtering from the process. Any employee complaint would now go directly to a third-party review board before being routed internally. No more convenient misfiling. No more inconclusive outcomes for documented patterns. The Alderton Grand implemented a similar structure for guest and staff complaints. Frank Weston oversaw it personally. He said in a hospitality industry publication that the hardest part was not designing the new system. The hardest part was accepting that the old system had not failed by accident. It had failed because no one had made failing costly enough. Preston Galt did not return to the Alderton Grand. His position was eliminated as part of the restructuring. He moved to a smaller property in a suburb of Indianapolis, in a role without supervisory authority. The hospitality industry is not large. His name appeared in the records that followed him. Simone was offered a lead position on the executive lounge team. She took it. On her first day in the new role, she wrote one rule on the notepad she kept at the station. She didn't frame it. She didn't post it on the wall. She just wrote it for herself, as a reminder. You don't need to know who someone is to treat them right. You just have to decide that's the kind of person you want to be. Derek Paulson moved into a senior director role within Meridian's leadership development division 18 months later. He said in a team meeting once that the moment he stepped off that elevator and saw Loretta's face, something finished forming in him that had been trying to form for a long time. The willingness to make the call, he said, even when you're not sure what it costs you. Especially then, and Claire, the retired librarian from Indianapolis who had been minding her own business with her tea and her phone. She never monetized the video. She turned down 2 interview requests that offered compensation. When someone asked her online why she posted it, she answered in 4 words, "Because I was there." The video reached 51 million views. Now I want to ask you something directly. You've been in rooms. You've watched things happen. You've heard words that landed the way Preston's words landed, out loud and unashamed in spaces where they had no business being. Maybe you were the one those words were aimed at. Maybe you were standing nearby, close enough to see everything, phone in your pocket, deciding. What did you do? What would you do now? Loretta Simms kept the notebook. The one she wrote in while she sat by the window looking at the lake. She didn't need it for the investigation in the end, because the investigation had Simone's account and Derek's report and 3 minutes and 51 seconds of footage. But she kept it anyway. Not as evidence. As a record of who she was in that room. How still she stayed. How clearly she saw. How she did not let him reach the thing inside her that he was trying to reach. She carried that notebook in the front pouch of the same bag she had carried that day. The one Preston had pointed at. The one that had stayed exactly where she said it. If this story hit somewhere real, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Because here's the truth I keep coming back to. Respect is not something you earn by wearing the right uniform or carrying the right title or knowing the right names. It is something you give because of the person you have decided to be. The moment you make someone prove they belong somewhere before you treat them like a human being, that decision tells us nothing about them. It tells us everything about you.